Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about episode 26 of season 1 of Green Lantern the Animated Series. And this is it. This is our season and, sadly, series finale. But I gotta say, this is a very satisfying end to what really is, outside of the comics, the greatest realization of the Green Lantern mythos. The live action movie gave it an honest stab, but it didn't work out for many, many reasons. Here we have why Green Lantern is awesome. Here we have why, when it is at its peak, Green Lantern is easily something that you can put on the shelf right next to Star Wars in terms of just epic sort of that epic sci-fi fantasy stuff. Seriously. In terms of that sort of thing, despite it coming from, the superhero tradition, heck, Star Wars kind of came out of the old timey movie serial tradition, so, really apples and oranges, right? But anyway, in either case, when it comes to that whole epic science fantasy, as I said, there's really two guys who do it and really do it awesomely, and that's Star Wars and Green Lantern. And here we see Green Lantern at its absolute finest. It's epic, it's exciting, it's emotional, it's fun, it's funny, it's just plain cool as hell. And even though this is the end of this particular series, as I said over my Young Justice, which is also review, which was coming also to its season and series finale this week, DC doesn't keep its animated is pretty good about keeping its animated shows on the air, so you never know. A few years down the line, they might decide to take another crack at Green Lantern. So anyway, let's kind of talk about the plot elements here, and then we'll sort of move on to the characterization stuff. Okay, first of all, I gotta say I got an enormous kick out of seeing Hal consulting the Book of Oa at the very beginning, where he figures out that I has been destroying uninhabited systems. Again, if you know the comics, you know that the Book of Oa is serious business. This is where the rules that the Green Lanterns operate under. I mean, literally, the abilities of the Green Lantern power rings are essentially operate under the rules of the Book of Oa. For example, in Sinestro Corps War, the Guardians made it possible so that the Green Lantern's rings could be used lethally, and unless things have changed, that's still in effect, and that was an enormous change, and they did that by rewriting the Book of Oa. And again, if you've just not read the comics, you don't understand what an enormously big deal the Book of Oa is, but as a fan of the comics, I was so thrilled by this. Unfortunately, this whole Book of Oa scene, we never really get to see all that cool stuff. Instead, what we see is Hal figuring out something that these immortal, ageless little blue midgets in dresses, who are supposedly the wisest things in the galaxy, couldn't figure out. Also, neither could any of the other members of the Green Lantern Corps, despite the fact that the Green Lanterns are essentially space cops. Seriously, all these literally thousands of people didn't notice that Aya was only destroying uninhabited systems. It's just dumb luck that Hal figures this out. I mean, the epic stupidity that you have to let slide in order to have that happen. Oh man, I really hate to dump a bucket of cold water on what is otherwise a really stellar episode, but that's just really damn stupid. But anyway, we got a nice moment with Tomar-Re, another fan favorite character. So before that, okay, I've said what I had to say about that scene, so let's just kind of move on. On the other hand, it does mean that Aya is in fact not guilty of genocide, so her doing the whole redemption thing goes down a whole lot more easy. In the comics, Hal genuinely was guilty of genocide, except that he was possessed by Parallax and blah 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 blah, and a bunch of stuff that will make absolutely no sense if you've not read the comics. So I won't waste too much time of the folks who are only familiar with the animated series on that. Let me see. Okay, so we got to see Larvox and Chip and Disco Lantern, whose name I still cannot remember, Jadex or something like that. We got to see them going out there in the big fight with the Manhunters and really, really kicking some ass. I mean, dang, who would have ever thought Larvox was capable of that, huh? And Chip, of all people, saves Guy Gardner's life. You look at that and you think, wow, it's pretty seriously indignant that in the comics he was killed when he was hit by a truck. No, I'm not kidding. He really did die when he was hit by a truck. You know, I love the comics, but man, sometimes, huh? Some days. Alright. Okay, now I gotta also say that during the fight with the Manhunters, you know, I said that at its peak, you can compare Green Lantern to Star Wars, and I don't really think I need to present any more of an example than what we see with the Green Lanterns fighting the Manhunters. I mean, that was just so sweeping and epic and cool. But then again, so was the big fight with the Red Lanterns. Jeez. Twice in one season we get stuff like that. I mean, wow. Not to mention all the other times the show did stuff that was incredibly awesome, but still, wow. And of course we get Guy in absolutely perfect form, just being an obnoxious jerk, but also, you know, really kind of giving Kilowog the kick in the pants that he needs, being really funny, just really being what Guy Gardner is and should be when he's being well written. So, yeah, seriously, this is a really, really great interpretation of Guy that we got on this show. So, I'm glad that we got that. And, which all leads us into Aya's going back to the beginning of time. And we see, you know, the hand and, you know, the universe being formed. And of course, this is all straight out of the comics. You know, the hand of Corona and all this ties into Crisis on Infinite Earths. You know, the absolutely probably the most legendary story that DC Comics has ever put out, and they've been around for almost 80 years. You know, again, there's just so much history and lore from the comics in that scene, and just that image, that is absolutely one of my favorite just images from the DC universe, because that's what the birth of the universe really should look like. I mean, I'm not even saying this in terms of a religious context or anything like that. That's totally on you guys, whatever you believe about how the universe came into existence. We don't talk about that here. I'm just saying that this feels, it looks like what the birth of a universe should look like. And it's especially fitting because there is a hand there. And we do have humans and aliens playing a part in bringing the universe into existence. And yeah, I just cannot put into words just how powerful and cool and just awesome and just right that image is to me. That is how the DC universe should have come into existence. Let's put it that way. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. That is how a superhero universe is born. Yeah. Okay. So, let me see here. I think, lore-wise, that kind of covers all the nuts and bolts of that. So let's get into the characters. Not really a whole lot to say about what's going on with Kilowog. He just continues to be himself. You know, Guy kind of has that moment where he gives him a good kick in the pants, and we've already talked about how cool Guy was this episode. We've seen, you know, Kilowog just continuing to be very supportive of Razor, and all, just being what a good military sergeant should be. You know, he's got that really tough exterior, but underneath he's really kind of a softy. And of course, all of that is really just why Kilowog is such a beloved character among Green Lantern fans. Hal. Hal's really kind of going on a really cool. A lot of stuff is. I like how when Aya asks him he's there at the moment of the end, what really does look like will be the end of the universe, what emotion he's feeling, and he answers regret. Well, we see that in that scene with Tomar-Re, and you know that Hal is being completely honest with her there. He really was just being himself, doing what he does, flouting the rules, being Hal Jordan. And now, here it is, the fruits of his labor, his handiwork. It might be Aya that's pulling the trigger, but it's basically Hal that's loaded and cocked the gun that's going to destroy everything. And really, just think how crushing that must be to realize that inadvertently you have set into motion events that will erase the existence of everything and everyone. This is this kind of thing that would crush most people, but it doesn't crush Hal Jordan. Hal keeps going and fighting and trying to the end, and ultimately he succeeds. And that, and the fact that he can overcome great fear, is why Hal is worthy of a Green Lantern ring. Why he is hailed generally as the greatest of the Green Lanterns. Now, yes, in the comics they ultimately say that history says the greatest Green Lantern will be Sodam Yat. Well, Sodam Yat doesn't seem to exist in this universe, so blah 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 blah. Here, Hal really is being the greatest of all the Green Lanterns, and it is so darn cool. Now, of course, that brings us to Aya and Razor, and you really do have to talk about these two together. Now, I did like how they really tied it into what was going on in Scarred, where we see that a sliver of Aya came from a living being, and Hal is able to use that as what finally gets through to her, that she is not just a machine. And I like this because it's such a simple and basic idea, but it works so well. It works on a storytelling level. It works on an emotional level. It works on the plot level. It just works on all levels. And it really is just very satisfying, both in terms of story and emotion, when Aya comes back. It feels like a moment, like a change that was earned in terms of storytelling, in terms of characterization. And, of course, just the interaction between her and Razor, the way it just so turns around so much, And I love how Razor phrased it so beautifully when I asked him why he couldn't kill her. He says, "I have no hate in my heart for you, only love." I mean, that really just sums it all up so perfectly. And of course, then this is after Aya kills Razor or grievously wounds him and is able to bring him back. They only get what feels like the briefest moments to be happy before Aya has to go and sacrifice herself. I mean, it's just so wonderful and tragic, and just the acting and the music and the visuals of them holding each other, it's just as good as you could possibly ask for. It would be a disservice to say that this is good for a superhero cartoon show, or this would be good for the comics. No, this is just pure good storytelling in general. The genre, the medium, are completely and utterly irrelevant. If this was a movie or a TV show with live action and actors and all that other fun stuff, and they did it and they executed this well, people would hail it as a pinnacle of TV or movies or whatever. Well, here we are looking at a pinnacle, and it doesn't matter that it's a superhero story. It doesn't matter that it's CGI. It doesn't matter that it's essentially a cartoon. It is a pinnacle of good storytelling. Something that you can put alongside the side of, the list of good storytelling moments out there in all the genres of storytelling that there are too numerous to list. But this episode and the way it all wraps up there in that climax is certainly worthy of being among the very best. And let me see. I really could go on and on about that, but I think I've said it I think I've said what I need to say there. So, as much as I'd love to continue to rave, I think it's best to move on. What's needed to be said has been said. This ultimately brings us to the sort of wrapping it all up thing, where when Razor is bidding them goodbye to set off and try and find some way to bring Aya back, and he tells them that he thanks Hal and Kilowog for saving him. You already have. Well, in a way, yeah, that is true. Razor certainly wouldn't have become the man that he is without Hal and Kilowog, without Aya. But let's not forget that Razor has also saved himself. Razor, along the way, deliberately made choices. I mean, look at what he did at the very beginning of the series, when he sort of realizes, this whole Red Lantern thing is going too far. We're killing innocents. We're becoming what we hate. Razor's own choices have been an integral part of him becoming the man who he is. Now, granted, he's made mistakes along the way, but ultimately he has made the vast majority of his choices have been the right choices. And that's why he's able to go out there in the universe and have a sense of hope that he might find a way to restore Aya to life. And the Blue Lantern ring appearing and going after him is an acknowledgement of that. That there is hope. Well, again, I have a feeling if I just keep going on, I'll just end up talking in circles and repeating myself. So, I guess that wraps it up, folks. It is truly going to be... it's a true loss to see this show not get a second season, especially since there were so many threads hinted at over the course of this series that if this show had continued on for several more seasons, we would have just seen some utterly, absolutely, insanely epic stuff. So much was set up that we could one day see, for example, the War of Light, or maybe even the Black Lanterns, the Blackest Night. The Blackest Night falls from the skies. Oh man, do I love Blackest Night. But that's not meant to be. But I think that the Blue Lantern ring being the last thing that we see, that symbol of hope, is so fittingly appropriate, because just because this series didn't pan out doesn't mean that there'll never be another Green Lantern cartoon sometime in the future. Look how many Spider-Man cartoons there have been. Look how many X-Men cartoons there have been. Look at how many Justice League cartoons there have been. Batman cartoons, Superman cartoons. Superheroes are always returning to television, particularly DC superheroes. They're pretty darn good at that. So while this story has come to a close, it really wouldn't surprise me if we saw Green Lantern back on TV again someday. So with that said, folks, I'm going to call it here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe, and of course you can follow me on Twitter @HoosierJedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.